I've always believed that life's most profound betrayals come not from enemies, but from those you hold closest. The ones whose faces you memorize in the quiet moments of dawn, whose laughter weaves into the fabric of your days. My name is Daniel Harper, and for 15 years, I thought I knew my wife, Claire. Her smile, the way her hazel eyes caught the light, the soft cadence of her voice when she read to our daughter Lily. These were the anchors of my world. But anchors can rust, and what I thought was solid ground beneath me turned out to be quicksand. Claire and I met in our mid-20s at a bookstore in Portland. I was thumbing through a worn copy of Moby Dick, pretending to be the kind of guy who read classics for fun, when she bumped into me, her arms full of poetry books. She apologized, her cheeks flushing, and I made some dumb joke about Melville being overrated. She laughed, and that was it. I was hers. We married 2 years later, built a life in a cozy craftsman house in Seattle, and welcomed Lily 5 years after that. I worked as a structural engineer, designing bridges that spanned rivers and connected cities. Claire was a graphic designer, freelancing from home so she could be there when Lily got off the school bus. We were ordinary, happy, or so I thought. The first crack appeared on a Tuesday in late April, though I didn't recognize it as such at the time. I'd been working late on a project, a suspension bridge proposal that had me buried in calculations and client meetings. I came home around 9, expecting the usual. Lily asleep, Claire curled up on the couch with a glass of wine and her sketch pad. Instead, the house was dark, the kind of still that feels like it's holding its breath. I called out for her, my voice echoing in the empty living room. No answer. I checked my phone, thinking I'd missed a text. Nothing. A flicker of worry sparked in my chest, but I tamped it down. She was probably at a friend's, maybe a last-minute client dinner. I texted her. *K, where you at? House is quiet without you. *, no response. I poured myself a glass of water, sat at the kitchen island, and waited. An hour later, headlights swept across the front windows, and I heard the garage door rumble open. Claire walked in, her hair slightly mussed, her face flushed like she'd been running. She wore a navy blazer over a white blouse, the kind of outfit she'd put on for a professional meeting, but something about her seemed off, her movements too quick, her smile too tight when she saw me. "Long day?" I asked, keeping my tone light. She nodded, dropping her purse on the counter. "Yeah, client meeting ran late. You know how it is, endless revisions." She kissed my cheek, but it felt perfunctory, like a box checked. "Lily's at my mom's for the night. I forgot to tell you." I frowned. "You didn't mention that. Everything okay?" "Of course," she said too quickly. "Just thought it'd be nice for her to spend some time with Grandma." She busied herself with the dishes in the sink, though they were already clean. I watched her, the way her hands moved with a nervous energy, the way she avoided my eyes. Something was wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on it. I told myself I was tired, paranoid. Work had been brutal, and I was seeing shadows where there were none. Over the next few weeks, the shadows grew. Claire started leaving the house more often. Late-night client meetings, coffee with friends I'd never heard of, weekend errands that stretched into hours. She'd always been independent, but this felt different, like she was carving out a space I wasn't invited into. Her phone, once left carelessly on the counter, was now always in her pocket or turned face down. When I asked about her day, her answers were vague, punctuated by quick subject changes. I tried to ignore the gnawing in my gut, the voice that whispered she was slipping away. One night in May, I woke up at 3 a.m. to an empty bed. The sheets on her side were cold. I found her in the living room, curled up on the couch, her phone glowing in her hand. She didn't hear me approach, and when I cleared my throat, she jumped, locking the screen so fast it was like a reflex. "Couldn't sleep?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Yeah," she said, tucking her hair behind her ear. "Just scrolling. You know how it is." But her eyes darted away, and I saw the flicker of guilt before she masked it with a yawn. I didn't press her. I went back to bed, staring at the ceiling until dawn, my mind spinning. The next morning, I did something I'd never thought I'd do. I checked her phone while she was in the shower. My hands shook as I typed in her passcode, Lily's birthday, the same as mine. Her messages were clean, too clean, like she'd scrubbed them. But her email was another story. Buried in a folder labeled work, I found a chain with a name I didn't recognize. Ethan Caldwell. The emails were brief, logistical. Asterisk, meet me at the usual spot, 7 p.m. asterisk. Can't wait to see you. But they hit like a punch to the chest. The timestamps matched her late nights, her unexplained absences. I put the phone down, my heart pounding so hard I thought I'd be sick. Ethan Caldwell. I didn't know him, but his name burned into my brain. I spent the rest of the day in a fog, going through the motions at work while my mind raced. Who was he? A client? A friend? Something else? I didn't want to believe it, but the pieces were falling into place, and they formed a picture I couldn't unsee. That night, I confronted her. We were in the kitchen, Lily asleep upstairs. I kept my voice low, but it trembled with the weight of what I was about to say. Claire? Who's Ethan Caldwell? Her face went pale, her eyes wide for a split second before she recovered. Ethan? He's a client. Why? Don't lie to me, I said, my voice sharper than I intended. I saw the emails. Meet me at the usual spot? What's that about? She crossed her arms, her expression hardening. You went through my phone? I had to, I said, hating how defensive I sounded. You've been acting strange for weeks. Disappearing, hiding things. I'm not an idiot, Claire. She sighed, running a hand through her hair. It's nothing, Daniel. He's a client and we've been working on a project together. The emails are just casual. You're blowing this out of proportion. Am I? I stepped closer, searching her face for the woman I thought I knew. Then why do you look so guilty right now? Her lips parted, but no words came out. For a moment we just stood there, the silence between us louder than any argument. Then she turned away, muttering something about needing space, and left me standing in the kitchen, my world cracking open. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I dug deeper. I searched Ethan Caldwell online, my fingers clumsy on the keyboard. He was a photographer, mid-30s, with a slick website showcasing moody portraits and cityscapes. His Instagram was full of artsy shots, coffee cups, rain-streaked windows, and, in one post, a woman's hand holding a glass of wine. Her fingers adorned with rings I recognized as Claire's. The caption read, "Evening light and good company." Posted 3 weeks ago, the night she'd come home late, her blazer rumpled. I felt like I was falling, my stomach lurching as the truth solidified. She was cheating. My Claire, the woman who'd promised to love me forever, was meeting another man, sharing moments that belonged to us. The betrayal wasn't just in the act. It was in the secrecy, the lies, the way she'd looked me in the eye and pretended everything was fine. The next day, I hired a private investigator. I didn't tell anyone, not even my brother, who'd always been my confidant. This was too raw, too shameful. The investigator, a gruff man named Paul with a handshake like a vice, didn't sugarcoat things. "Give me a week," he said. "If there's something to find, I'll find it." He didn't need a week. 3 days later, he sent me a report that made my blood run cold. Photos of Claire and Ethan at a cafe, laughing over coffee. Photos of them walking through a park, his hand brushing her arm. Photos of them entering a boutique hotel downtown, her head ducked as if she knew she was being watched. The timestamps matched her client meetings. The report included a summary of their movements, their routines, the way they moved together like they'd done this 100 times. I sat in my office, staring at the photos, my hands shaking. The man in the pictures was handsome in a rugged way, with dark hair and a confident smirk. Claire looked at him the way she used to look at me. Eyes bright, lips curved in a private smile. I wanted to scream, to throw something, but all I could do was sit there, the weight of her betrayal crushing me. I didn't confront her again. Not yet. I needed to know more, needed to understand how far this had gone, how long she'd been living this double life. I started paying closer attention, noticing the little things I'd missed. The faint scent of cologne on her scarf, the way she'd linger in the bathroom after a shower, as if washing away evidence. I felt like a detective in my own marriage, piecing together a crime I didn't want to believe had happened. One night, while she was out working, I went through her laptop. I found a hidden folder with photos, her and Ethan at a gallery opening, their arms around each other. A selfie of them in a car, her head on his shoulder. There were emails, too. Ones she hadn't bothered to delete, full of intimate details. Plans for weekends away, inside jokes, promises to make more time. Each word was a knife, carving away at the life we'd built. I didn't cry. I didn't have it in me. Instead, a cold rage settled in my chest, a need for justice that burned hotter with every discovery. Claire had betrayed me, betrayed Lily, betrayed everything we'd promised each other. I couldn't let it go unanswered. I didn't know what form my revenge would take, but I knew it would be precise, calculated, and devastating. She'd feel the weight of what she'd done, just as I did now. As I closed her laptop, the house silent except for the hum of the refrigerator, I made a vow. This wasn't just about hurt feelings or a broken heart. This was about reclaiming what was mine, my dignity, my family, my sense of self. Claire had made her choice, and now I would make mine. The game had changed, and I was no longer the trusting husband she'd taken for granted. I was something else now, something she'd never seen coming. The days after I uncovered Claire's betrayal were like walking through a fog so thick I could barely see my own hands. My life, once a clear path of routine and purpose, had become a labyrinth of doubt and anger. I went through the motions, kissing Lily's forehead as she left for school, nodding through meetings at work, forcing smiles when Claire asked how my day was. But inside, I was a furnace, the fire of her infidelity stoking a plan that grew sharper with every passing hour. I wasn't just going to confront her. I wasn't going to beg or shout or let her see me break. No, my revenge would be something else. Something that would cut deeper than words. Something that would make her feel the weight of her choices in a way she'd never forget. I started by learning everything I could about Ethan Caldwell. Knowledge, I figured, was my first weapon. The private investigator, Paul, had given me a starting point, but I needed more than photos and timestamps. I needed to understand who this man was, what made him tick, what weaknesses I could exploit. His website and social media were a goldmine. Ethan was a freelance photographer with a modest following, his work leaning heavily into moody aesthetics, black and white shots of abandoned buildings, portraits of strangers with haunted eyes. He had a knack for making the mundane look profound, and I could see why Claire, with her artist's soul, might have been drawn to him. His posts hinted at a life of restless creativity. Late nights in studios, impromptu road trips, gallery openings where he rubbed elbows with Seattle's artsy crowd. He was the opposite of me. Structured, predictable Daniel who designed bridges to last centuries, not fleeting moments to capture in a lens. I dug deeper, cross-referencing his name with public records, social connections, anything I could access without raising suspicion. Ethan lived in a loft downtown, a trendy spot in Belltown with exposed brick and floor-to-ceiling windows. He wasn't married, no kids, no obvious ties that would complicate things. His clients included local businesses, a few magazines, and, apparently, my wife. I found an invoice on Claire's laptop for a branding project she'd done for him. Legitimate work, it seemed, but dated months ago, long before the emails and hotel visits started. The project was her cover, I realized, a way to justify their time together. The thought made my stomach twist, but I pushed it down. Emotion was a luxury I couldn't afford right now. I also watched Claire more closely, though I was careful not to tip her off. She'd doubled down on her routine since our confrontation, as if trying to prove her innocence. She was home more often, cooking dinners, asking about my day with a forced cheerfulness that grated on me. But the signs were still there. The way her phone buzzed and she'd angle it away from me, the faint scent of unfamiliar cologne on her coat, the way her eyes lingered on the door when she thought I wasn't looking. She was still seeing him, I was sure of it. Paul confirmed it a week later with new photos. Claire and Ethan at a wine bar, their heads bent close, her hand resting on his arm. The sight of it fueled my resolve. She thought she could play me for a fool, but she was about to learn who she was dealing with. The idea for my revenge came to me one night while I was lying awake, staring at the ceiling fan's slow spin. It wasn't enough to expose her, to throw the photos in her face and demand answers. That would be too quick, too fleeting. I wanted her to feel the betrayal as I had, slowly, inexorably, like a bridge collapsing under its own weight. I wanted Ethan to feel it too, to lose something he valued as much as I'd valued my marriage. And I wanted it to be public, undeniable, a spectacle that would leave them both reeling. The plan took shape in pieces, each one slotting into place like the beams of a structure I was designing. It would take time, precision, and a willingness to cross lines I'd never crossed before. But I was ready. Step 1 was to infiltrate their world. Ethan's next gallery opening was in 2 weeks, a solo exhibition at a small venue in Pioneer Square. The announcement was on his Instagram, complete with a pretentious caption about capturing the ephemeral. Claire hadn't mentioned it, but I knew she'd be there. I RSVP'd through the gallery's website, using a fake name and a burner email. I also reached out to Paul, asking him to tail Ethan in the days leading up to the event. I wanted to know his habits, his vulnerabilities, anything I could use. Paul delivered. Ethan was a creature of routine, frequenting the same coffee shop every morning, meeting clients at a handful of bars and restaurants, and spending late nights at his loft, often with Claire. I started preparing myself, too. I bought a new suit, charcoal, tailored, the kind of thing I'd never wear to my engineering firm. I practiced a different persona in the mirror, softening my usual clipped tone, adopting a slight drawl to mask my voice. I'd be David Reed, a freelance art critic with an interest in emerging photographers. I created a LinkedIn profile for David, complete with a vague bio and a stock photo of a man who looked nothing like me. I even wrote a few fake reviews on obscure art blogs, linking them to the profile to give it credibility. The goal was to blend in, to get close without being recognized. Claire had never seen me in this context. She'd never suspect I'd step foot in her artsy world. The night of the gallery opening, I parked a block away and sat in my car, steadying my breath. The air was cool, the streets slick with recent rain. I wore glasses I didn't need and a scarf to obscure my face, just in case. The gallery was a converted warehouse, its brick walls lined with Ethan's photos, each one lit dramatically by track lighting. The crowd was what I expected. Hipsters in vintage jackets, women in flowing dresses, everyone clutching wine glasses and murmuring about composition and light. I spotted Claire almost immediately. She wore a black dress, her hair swept up, her laughter carrying across the room as she stood next to Ethan. He was in a blazer, his hand resting lightly on her back, proprietary in a way that made my jaw clench. I mingled, keeping my distance, introducing myself as David Reed. I made small talk with a curator, a painter, a couple of collectors, dropping just enough jargon to sound convincing. I kept Claire and Ethan in my peripheral vision, noting how they moved together, how her eyes lit up when he spoke. It was torture, but it was also fuel. Every smile she gave him, every touch, was another nail in the coffin of our marriage. I approached Ethan when Claire was pulled away by a friend. "Impressive work," I said, gesturing to a photo of a rain-soaked alley. "You've got a real eye for the unseen." He grinned, clearly pleased. "Thanks, man. That's what I'm going for. Finding beauty in the overlooked." His voice was smooth, practiced, like he'd given the spiel 100 times. We talked for a few minutes, me feeding his ego, him eating it up. I mentioned a fictional magazine I wrote for, hinting at a feature I could pitch. His eyes lit up at the prospect of exposure. I suggested we grab coffee to discuss it further, and he handed me his card without hesitation. Step 1 complete. I was in. Over the next week, I met Ethan twice under the guise of David Reed. The first meeting was at his usual coffee shop, where I played the enthusiastic critic, asking about his process, his inspirations. He was vain, I realized, quick to talk about himself but slow to ask questions. Perfect. The second meeting was at a bar, where I got him talking about his life, his struggles to break into the art world, his disdain for corporate types who didn't get his work. I nodded along, filing away every detail. He mentioned Claire once, casually, calling her a friend who helps with branding. The lie was so smooth I almost admired it. Meanwhile, I kept up appearances at home. Claire was none the wiser, though I could tell she was on edge, sensing something off in my quiet demeanor. I didn't confront her, didn't let on that I knew. Instead, I played the doting husband, cooking her favorite meals, asking about her day with a smile that hid my fury. Lily was my anchor, her chatter about school and soccer the only thing keeping me grounded. I shielded her from the storm brewing inside me, but every night, after she was asleep, I'd retreat to my study and refine my plan. The centerpiece of my revenge was starting to take shape. Ethan's gallery opening had been a success, but he was hungry for more recognition, more prestige. I'd learned he was pitching a bigger exhibition, one that could put him on the map. He'd mentioned it at the bar, his eyes gleaming with ambition. "If I can get the right backers, it's game over," he'd said. "I'm talking national exposure." That was my opening. I'd give him what he wanted or make him think I could, then pull it out from under him. But it wasn't just about Ethan. Claire would be collateral damage, her betrayal exposed in a way that would haunt her as much as it haunted me. I contacted a friend from college, Marcus, who worked in event planning and owed me a favor. I pitched him a fake idea, a high-profile art showcase sponsored by a non-existent foundation I'd consulted for. Marcus didn't ask too many questions. He trusted me. I asked him to reach out to Ethan, posing as a representative of the foundation, and dangle the prospect of a solo exhibition at a prestigious venue. The catch? Ethan would need to invest upfront, time, money, and reputation to secure the slot. Marcus was skeptical but agreed to play along, sending Ethan an official-looking proposal. Ethan took the bait. Paul reported that he was scrambling to pull together a new portfolio, even borrowing money to cover preliminary costs. I fed Marcus just enough details to keep Ethan hooked: fake contracts, promises of media coverage, a guest list of invented VIPs. I also planted seeds of doubt about Claire, hinting to Ethan through David Reed that she might not be as committed to his career as he thought. I suggested she'd been talking to other photographers, using her branding expertise to network. It was a lie, but I knew it would fester, sowing discord between them. At home, I started subtly undermining Claire's confidence. I'd drop casual comments about her work, questioning why she was spending so much time on small projects when she could be doing more. I'd leave articles about infidelity on the kitchen counter, open to pages she couldn't miss. I wanted her to feel the walls closing in, to sense that her secrets weren't as safe as she thought. She grew quieter, her smile strained, but she didn't confront me. Maybe she was too deep in her lies to risk it. The final piece of my plan was the hardest to stomach. I needed evidence that would leave no room for denial, something that would expose them both to the world they cared about, her friends, her clients, his art circle. I asked Paul to set up surveillance at Ethan's loft, focusing on the nights Claire was there. I didn't want to see the footage myself, it would break me, but I needed it for what was coming. Paul delivered a week later, a USB drive with timestamped videos and audio. I locked it in my safe, unopened, my hands trembling as I turned the key. It was the final piece, the detonator for the bomb I was building. By the end of the month, everything was in place. Ethan was pouring his energy into the fake exhibition. Claire was unraveling under the pressure of her double life. And I was a man possessed, my every thought consumed by the moment I'd bring it all crashing down. I didn't know if I'd feel triumph or devastation when it was over, but I knew one thing. They'd both pay for what they'd done. The stage was set, and the curtain was about to rise. The air in Seattle was heavy with the promise of summer, but inside me, a winter storm raged. For weeks, I'd been a ghost in my own life, moving through the days with a singular focus: to dismantle the lie Claire and Ethan had built, to make them face the consequences of their betrayal. My plan was a bridge I'd engineered with precision, each beam and cable calculated to bear the weight of my vengeance. Now it was time to set it ablaze. The fake art exhibition was the centerpiece of my revenge, a trap I'd baited with Ethan's ambition and Claire's complicity. Marcus, my college friend, had played his part perfectly, feeding Ethan promises of a career-defining showcase at a prestigious venue, a converted theater in Capitol Hill, booked under the guise of the non-existent Northwest Arts Foundation. Ethan had poured everything into it: his savings, his time, his reputation. He'd even roped Claire into designing promotional materials, unaware that every step he took was pulling him deeper into my design. I'd watched from the shadows, as David Reed, the art critic who didn't exist, nudging Ethan along with emails and calls that stoked his ego and clouded his judgment. The event was set for a Friday nig tea in June. I'd ensured it would be a spectacle, inviting Ethan's entire network, clients, gallery owners, local influencers, through Marcus's carefully crafted outreach. I'd also leaked the event to a few art blogs, framing it as a must-see for Seattle's creative elite. Ethan was ecstatic, posting about it non-stop, his Instagram a parade of behind-the-scenes shots. Him hanging prints, Claire adjusting a logo on a banner, their smiles oblivious to the storm coming. I felt a twisted satisfaction watching them plan their triumph, knowing it would be their undoing. At home, I played the part of the oblivious husband. Claire was distracted, her focus split between her secret life and the exhibition. She'd come home late, claiming long hours at her studio, but I knew better. Paul's surveillance confirmed she was spending nights at Ethan's loft. Their routine so predictable it was almost insulting. I didn't confront her. Instead, I mirrored her detachment, keeping conversations light, my smiles a mask for the rage simmering beneath. Lily was my only refuge. Her chatter about soccer games and school projects a lifeline to the man I used to be. I shielded her from the truth, but every hug she gave me felt like a reminder of what Claire was destroying. The night before the exhibition, I finalized my preparations. Paul had delivered the USB drive with the surveillance footage. Hours of Claire and Ethan in compromising moments. Their voices clear, their actions unmistakable. I'd forced myself to watch just enough to confirm its impact, my stomach churning as I saw my wife in another man's arms, her laughter echoing in his loft. The footage was raw, undeniable, a blade I'd wield at the right moment. I copied it to a laptop I'd bought specifically for this, password protected and hidden in my office. I also prepared a slideshow, a curated selection of Paul's photos and video stills, synced to a timeline that would play on the theater's projector during the exhibition. Marcus had arranged access to the venue's AV system, thinking it was for a promotional reel. He didn't know what I had planned, and I didn't tell him. This was mine alone. I also enlisted a second ally, though it pained me to involve her. Claire's best friend, Sarah, a no-nonsense lawyer who'd always been kind to me. I didn't tell her everything, just enough, that I suspected Claire was unfaithful and needed help exposing the truth. Sarah was skeptical but loyal to me as much as to Claire. She agreed to attend the exhibition and keep an eye on Claire, feeding me updates on her phone. I didn't tell her about the slideshow. I didn't trust anyone to know the full scope of my plan. The night of the exhibition, I arrived early, slipping into the theater as David Reed. The venue was buzzing, fairy lights strung across the ceiling, Ethan's photos displayed on sleek stands. Guests milled about, sipping wine and murmuring about art. Ethan was in his element, shaking hands, his grin wide as he soaked up the attention. Claire was by his side, radiant in an emerald dress, her laughter cutting through me like glass. I stayed in the background, my scarf and glasses keeping me anonymous, my heart pounding as I checked the AV booth. The laptop was connected, the slideshow loaded, set to trigger during Ethan's opening remarks. As the crowd settled, Ethan took the stage, his voice confident as he thanked everyone for coming. Claire stood to his left, beaming with pride. I felt a pang, not of love but of loss, for the woman I thought she was, for the life we'd built. Then I pushed it aside. This wasn't about sentiment. This was about justice. Ladies and gentlemen, Ethan began. This exhibition is a culmination of years of work, of capturing moments that speak to the human condition. His words were smooth, rehearsed, but I barely heard them. My eyes were on the projector screen behind him, waiting. The slideshow started innocently, Ethan's photos, a montage of his ephemeral aesthetic. The crowd murmured approval. Then, without warning, the screen flickered. A new image appeared. Claire and Ethan at the wine bar, her hand on his arm. A gasp rippled through the room. Ethan faltered, his smile slipping. Another image. Them entering the hotel, her head ducked. Then a video clip, audio blaring. Claire's voice, soft and intimate, saying, "I wish we could stay like this forever." The crowd went silent, then erupted in whispers. Ethan's face drained of color. Claire froze, her eyes wide with horror as she realized what was happening. I stepped forward, shedding my scarf and glasses, letting them see me. "Daniel." Claire's voice was a broken whisper, her hand clutching Ethan's arm as if for support. The slideshow continued. More photos, more clips, each one a nail in the coffin of their deception. Guests stared, some covering their mouths, others pulling out phones to record. Ethan stammered, trying to regain control, but the screen was relentless, exposing every stolen moment. Sarah, standing near the front, looked at me, her face a mix of shock and betrayal, but she didn't move to stop it. "Turn it off," Claire screamed, lunging toward the AV booth. I blocked her path, my voice calm but cold. "You did this, Claire. You and him. This is what you chose." She stared at me, tears streaming down her face, but I felt nothing. Ethan was shouting now, demanding to know who was responsible, but the crowd was turning on him, their murmurs growing hostile. His reputation, his career, was crumbling in real time. Gallery owners who'd praised him minutes ago were slipping out the door. Bloggers were already typing, their posts about to light up the internet. I leaned close to Claire, my voice low so only she could hear. "You thought you could have it all, me, Lily, him. You were wrong." I turned to Ethan, who was still on stage, his face a mask of panic. "And you," I said loud enough for the room to hear, "you thought you could take what's mine and walk away clean. This is just the start." I walked out, leaving them to the chaos. The slideshow looped, the images searing into the minds of everyone there. By morning, Ethan's exhibition was a scandal, his name trending for all the wrong reasons. Claire's clients dropped her, her reputation as a designer tainted by association. Friends turned their backs, Sarah among them, unable to forgive the betrayal she'd witnessed. I didn't go home that night. I checked into a hotel, needing space to breathe, to process what I'd done. Part of me expected relief, but all I felt was a hollow ache. I'd destroyed them, just as I'd planned, but it didn't erase the pain of Claire's betrayal. It didn't bring back the years we'd lost. I thought of Lily, asleep at her grandmother's, unaware of the storm I'd unleashed. I'd protected her so far, but I knew the fallout would reach her eventually. That was the hardest part, the collateral damage to the one person who mattered most. The next morning, Claire called, her voice raw from crying. She begged to talk, to explain, but I hung up. I wasn't ready to hear her excuses. Not yet. Ethan sent an email as David Reed, accusing me of sabotage, threatening legal action. I deleted it, knowing he had no ground to stand on. The footage was real, the truth undeniable. They'd built their house on lies, and I'd torn it down. Over the next week, I moved out, renting a small apartment near my office. I told Lily it was temporary, that Mommy and Daddy needed some time apart. She cried, and I held her, promising we'd be okay. Claire tried to reach me, leaving voicemails, showing up at my work, but I kept her at arm's length. I wasn't ready to forgive if I ever would be. The divorce papers were already in motion, my lawyer moving swiftly to protect my assets and custody of Lily. Ethan's career didn't recover. The art world is small and scandal spreads fast. His exhibition was canceled, his clients vanished, his loft went up for sale. I heard he left Seattle, chasing a fresh start somewhere else. Claire moved in with her mother, her design business struggling to survive the gossip. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. The wreckage spoke for itself. As I sit in my new apartment, Lily's drawings taped to the fridge, I wonder if I went too far. The revenge was cruel, calculated to inflict maximum pain, and it worked. But it didn't heal me. The love I had for Claire is gone, replaced by a scar that aches when I think of her. I don't regret what I did. She and Ethan made their choices, and I made mine. But I'm left with a question that haunts me. What does justice cost when it leaves you as broken as the ones you punished? I don't have an answer yet. Maybe I never will. But I have Lily and I have myself, and for now, that's enough. The bridge I built to cross this betrayal is behind me, burned to ash. I'm on the other side now, and I'll keep moving forward one step at a time.